Hello everyone, this is Highlander from MTG Cardsmith doing another custom Magic the Gathering card review. Sorry, I didn't make any videos last weekend. I usually do these on the weekends. But I had a busy weekend. I apologize for that. To all 6 of you, I apologize. Alright, so here we have a card by Suleman, our old friend. And let's see what we got going on here. This is part of a cycle, so we're going to look at the whole cycle. Cycle of enchantments that use this era mechanic. So let's figure out what we got going on here. First of all, what the heck is going on in this art? We got like a Yeti here, who's like he's come to eat some people, and then here we've got a couple soldiers that are like hiding behind this teepee. They're like, don't let them see you. And then this little girl comes up and she's like, they're right over there. And he's like, oh, thanks, little girl, and he eats them. That's what this picture looks like. Okay, so Age of Strife, double red enchantment, era. This enters the battlefield with an era counter for each player. Okay, 2-player game, 2 counters. 4-player game, 4 counters. When the last era counter is removed from it, sacrifice it. This has 3, remove an era counter from this. Any player may activate this ability. Okay, that reads a little awkwardly. I would suggest that you flip the last sentence and the... let me just go ahead and close that. So let me suggest a wording here. Era. This enters the battlefield with an era counter on it for each player. All right, that much is good. It has, it has, quote, 3, remove an era counter from this. Any player may, any player may activate this ability, period. End quote. And then when the last era counter is removed from it, sacrifice it. I think that reads a little better. And parentheses. Then enters the battlefield with an era counter on it for each player. It has 3, remove an era counter from this. Any player may activate its ability. When the last era counter is removed from it, sacrifice it. There you go. I think that reads a lot better because it's like, okay, enters the battlefield, people can interact with it, goes away when it has no counters. Here it's like, enters the battlefield, when it has no counters, it goes away, and you're like, what? And then it's like, oh, okay, people can interact with it. You know what I mean? So just simple little change, but I think it can really improve things quite a bit. All right, let's look at the card itself. Each attacking creature has +1/+0 for each creature blocking it. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, its controller untaps it. Excuse me. Each attacking creature has +1/+0 for each creature blocking it. Whenever it deals combat... Okay, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, its controller untaps it. Okay, so this is an effect that all players get, which makes this card a little awkward. Because, okay, so basically what you get is your creatures will trade up more often, but so will the opponents. And then any creatures that get through have like pseudo-vigilance, which is a little strange for a red card. I don't know about this like untap clause here. So when would you want to play this card? So you play this card and you attack. Okay, so let's say you got a board, they got a board. Okay, you play this card and you're like at parity. You play this card and attack, and now your creatures trade up by a little bit. So you're getting a small bonus there. And they can't just take it all because your creatures have pseudo-vigilance. So that kind of makes sense. But if they make some trades, then they can kind of do the same thing back to you. If you're behind, this card's very bad. Right? If you're behind, this is actually not a card you want to play. And in fact, you might be in a situation where you play this, you become behind, and then you are the one that wants to remove the era counters. But if you're already behind, you can't spend your turn paying 3 to twice, paying 6 mana to get this out of the way with such a minor effect that it has. You know, you got to actually be doing things. But its effect is quite minor. So it's like, this card to me feels almost like the person who plays it kind of gets the worst end of the deal. Because, like, so if you're already ahead, you play this card and you're still ahead, but now you're kind of a little bit less ahead because instead of adding to your board, you're playing this thing that kind of gives you pseudo-vigilance. It's got a really minor effect, right? And it doesn't really impact the board on its own. But if you're behind, this card does nothing. And in fact, it's a detriment to you. Because your opponent now gets all benefits of this card. So you basically wouldn't play this ever if you're behind. It would just sit there stuck in your hand, and you've basically mulliganed. If your opponent is playing a control deck with very few creatures, this card also doesn't really do much. Because it doesn't actually make your creatures deal extra damage, it just means that they trade up a little bit. So against a control deck, this is also kind of a dead card. And not only that, but control decks probably have enough time, especially if you play a card like this, to pay 6 over a couple turns and actually just kill this thing. So like this card's actively bad in those situations. So really this card's only good in a situation when you're ahead. And it kind of barely is that good, unfortunately. So, like, I would much rather just play another creature, you know, rather than play this. Because another creature can't turn against you when you lose your lead. And this is a card that will help you lose your lead, by the way, because this is a 2-mana enchantment that doesn't do that much. So, I have to say I'm not huge on this one. It's only good at parity or ahead if you are playing creature v creature, basically. And that's just not really something that I look for in a card. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know how I feel about Era yet. This is maybe not the best showcase of the Era mechanic because of the fact that it's just such a minor effect, and I would have a hard time finding a deck that would want to play a card like this. Maybe if you're playing like a tokens deck, but in a tokens deck, you're not really looking to trade up. You're looking to just overwhelm your opponent and get damage through. And this doesn't really help you get damage through it. Yeah, I don't know. This one I'm not the biggest fan of. But we'll see. We'll take a look at some of the other Era cards and judge that separately. As for this particular card, I have to give this one, I think, a 4 out of 5, or excuse me, a 4 out of 10. The Era mechanic is interesting. I'd like to see it in some other places to see kind of how it plays. But this particular card, I think, is just, not only is it not great, it also does this like weird pseudo vigilance thing, which is kind of not super red. So yeah, I mean, like, if this was a double red enchantment that said your creatures get +1/+0 in vigilance with this era thing, for double red, would that be a good card? And the answer is maybe in some decks. But this isn't even that. This is like worse than that. So yeah, unfortunately not a big fan of Age of Strife, but we'll look at some of the other era cards and we'll make a judgment about those. So thank you guys for watching.